Hello and welcome to Getting In, a college coach conversation. I'm Sally Ganga, and I hope you're enjoying the warmer weather that at least we're seeing here on the East Coast. I'm really excited for our show today. Our second segment is going to be with Lori Peltier, one of our college finance experts, who will be telling me about the good, the bad, and the ugly of parents taking out loans to pay for their students' college. In the last segment, Mary Sue Yoon, a college coach veteran, and I will be discussing how to develop your preliminary college list. But first, and I'm very excited because we have a special guest, Joe Ciofalo. Thank you. He tried to help me before the show started with the pronunciation. I'll have him say it for you so we can actually get it right. Joe is a former public high school counselor with over 20 years of experience in public school administration. So great background in education, but now owns a wrestling academy. So I think this is going to be a really nice opportunity for us to kind of interview someone who can talk to us about whether an athletics academy is going to be good for your student, because Joe's going to talk to us certainly about his own academy, but also when are sports academies the right place for your student. So Joe, let's first welcome.
Thank you. I'm sorry, it's Jamie.
Oh my God.
Jamie Ciofalo.
Jamie, I'm sorry,
Yes,
it's right
okay.
here on the screen. I don't know. And
many,
actually in my notes, it even says Jamie. So I don't know where Joe came from.
Too many O's in my last name, maybe.
Yeah, I think so. I got distracted. Well, thank you for being
You're
kind and pointing it out to me. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
All right, Jamie. So let's start out with, maybe you can tell our listeners what sports academies are. Not everybody might even know.
Great, thanks. Sports academies are not what they may appear to be on the surface. A specialized sports academy typically for middle and high school students is designed for those students who at that age have already exhibited the ability to compete at a very high level, which is way above their local school and recreation level. These are student athletes who will compete on a national and international level, and who are in need of the time, not just for their training, but also for the traveling that's involved with their competitions. So people are very familiar, I'm sure, with many of the elite gymnastics academies, because gymnastics is a high profile sport. You have the Bella Caroli Ranch, which is providing the gymnasts with their gymnastics instruction and also academics. Since then, there have been several sports academies that have been established over the past few years. There's basketball, there's equestrian, tennis, skiing, hockey. I was happy to hear that we were the first for wrestling, but we're not the only ones out there that are doing this for the unique population of students.
Mm-hmm. So just so people have a sense, you and I kind of we chatted earlier, and you were telling me about one of your students. Like, let's kind of give an example of the kind of student who really needs a sports academy, for whom a traditional middle school and high school is not going to work for them.
Yes, we have a freshman, grade 9. He was a wrestler. He was enrolled in our academy last year in grade 8 plus, and grade 8 plus is the year after the traditional 8th grade and before 9th grade. That many athletes will utilize that year to not only improve themselves athletically, give themselves a year to mature physically, mature, psychologically, social, emotionally, but also to get in advanced coursework so that they are, confident when they go to high school that they're going to be well prepared, especially because these are students who are going to have a lot less time with their teachers and a lot less time available for additional supports. So our young man, he is in grade 9. He just returned from Romania. He's a Greco-Roman wrestler. For those who may not be familiar, there's three styles of wrestling. We're not talking about the professional wrestling that you see on TV. It's there's scholastic style, which is called it folk style, which is what you typically see at a recreation or high school wrestling match. And then there's freestyle and Greco-Roman. Freestyle and Greco-Roman are the two styles that are used internationally. The United States, we have to be different. The United States is the only one that uses folk style. So for a young man who's interested strictly in Greco-Roman wrestling, he has very little options to train and compete. And he needs a specialized program. So he, made the commitment with his family to commit to Greco-Roman style of wrestling. He just returned from Romania. I'm very impressed by his level of responsibility and maturity. He flew to Romania by himself. He's 15 years old and met with his coaches there. And unfortunately, the trip had to be cut short by a few days because they're traveling from Romania, Serbia, throughout parts of Eastern Europe. One of their tournaments along their scheduled stops was in Moldova, which is right next to Ukraine, and they would not let them go. So they had to schedule flights to come home a bit earlier, which we all felt much better about. And anyway, came home safely. They performed very well at that tournament. I met with him yesterday because we need to go through his course selection for the second semester of his freshman year, which, being in an athletic academy like ours, he has the flexibility to take a couple of weeks off when he's traveling, or he could take the laptop with him. As long as he has Wi-Fi, he can do his work remotely. His semesters could run from April into August if he has a month where he'll have a lot of travel in the winter. So we met yesterday and I asked him if he has anything scheduled coming up, and now he's scheduled to go to Sweden. So he travels to Wisconsin, he travels to the U.S. Olympic Training Center in Colorado, and all for the purpose of Greco-Roman style wrestling. So he's a perfect example of the type of student athlete that needs and benefits from a specialized athletic academy.
So really the flexibility seems like a large piece of this, of why a student would want to attend, and one of the things I liked, by the way, this is a little bit of a departure, but I think from what we've been talking about, but I think it's important. Like, to me, when I hear about these academies, I worry about the academics, right? That they're going to be second. And one of the things that I thought was great when you talked to me is how you said that you didn't think tests, like, basically it shouldn't be about the grade, it should be about the learning. And so if a student doesn't learn something they need to learn, they're going to keep doing it until they learn it. You're not going to just pass them through. So let's talk about the academics and how you make sure that the academics are still there, even for a student like the one you're describing, where athletics is probably like his biggest focus.
Yeah, that's a great question. And I, as an educator who also has 30 years of coaching experience, I started out as a special education teacher and then moved into administration for school counseling, special services, and curriculum instruction over the years. And the one thing that always frustrated me and still frustrates me to this day is how the curriculum map is designed for 180, 185 days to the traditional school year, where the teachers are pretty much on a schedule. And when I've done professional development sessions for teachers, I always create the visual of them being public transportation bus drivers, where I'm in New Jersey, 10 miles from New York. So there are a lot of people who commute to New York City, and we'll often see a New Jersey Transit bus pull over to the bus stop, and it'd be a long line of commuters, and half of them would get on the bus and the bus would drive away because that bus driver has a schedule he has to keep up with, and they would have to wait for the next bus. And I tell teachers we don't want to be those bus drivers where, we'll pull up to the stop and then we're only going to be able to take in X number of students because we're just going to keep moving and leave the others behind. And I think that happens far too often. I've always had an issue with the grading system that's utilized in our country and how it's used to measure achievement and to create this caste system of honors and weighted GPAs. I believe in grades being used to measure learning. And if the student's not showing growth and not showing that they've mastered the standard, proficient in that standard, then we're not going to continue. There's no sense moving forward. And the one example I can give, especially in mathematics, our students come in and they are given a grade level assessment, and every single kid had the most recent year's worth of skills developed, 7th grade standards, 8th grade standards. It was the 2nd, 3rd, 4th grade decimals, fractions, percents that they didn't do well on, because they usually stop. They don't do it, teach it, and then they pretty much stop using it because they're going to move on to teaching, learning new topics. And it's a skill. And I give them the example of it, that would be like us teaching a 3rd grader a specific wrestling move. He gets to practice it for a couple of days and then never uses it again. But 5 years later in a tournament, telling him, all right, you need to use that move now to win. It's not going to, that skill's not going to be there. So what we do, it's not easy, but what we do is try to make sure that everyone is remediated before we actually start our year of instruction. So our first month of the school year, about the first 6 weeks actually of the school year, are spent on skill development, and it serves us well because students who need the remediation will have time to be remediated. And it also serves as the amount of time for our students to prepare for the private high school admissions test, which also has a lot of basic skills included. So, we feel that's valuable time. It's not really teaching to the test as much as it is preparing them for what's going to be coming next. And then we're able to, right after that test is administered, we're able to then go through the coursework, understanding that students may be on different levels of understanding, but most we teach not so much to the book or to the curriculum, but based on the group's ability to progress. And if there's one student who's struggling, that's a student who will ask, stay after today. Our day ends at 3:30. We would ask the parents to let them stay with us for an hour, coming on a weekend for an hour, which is all part of our program. If everyone's moving along, then we'll be able to move forward. So our grade 8+ program is designed to prepare students for the high school admissions test and to prepare them for what life in high school will be like, especially in a private high school as an athlete. So we make sure they are introduced to biology, chemistry, physics. They're not taking the full course, but they're introduced to it. So the first time they sit down in those classrooms, they're not completely lost, because we know that once they, when they're in high school, the demands placed upon them as athletes could be sometimes extreme. Waking up 6 a.m. for a morning workout, lift, strength training, and then go through their school day, and then practice again after school into the early evening, traveling to tournaments, and all that time maintaining their body weight because they have to be a specific weight. It's a challenge. So we're working on developing all of those skills to help them be successful when they get to high school.
Okay, great. And then we're running short on time, but I definitely want to ask why a student would want to stay at a more traditional middle school or high school. Like, even if they really like they're a top athlete, but what might, they could, in many ways, they could probably use the
Mhm.
benefits of an academy like yours. But what's a reason why they should stay with a kind of traditional school
The,
path?
the most typical response that we receive, when students are asking about our program is we ask every parent, every student, the same set of questions in a conversation. And the one that really stands out the most is, are you going to be able to handle the rigor and the requirements of this program, which is going to cause you to not have a lot of very little time for your friends at home, very little time for a social life. Every minute of your day is valuable, and we make sure that the parents and students understand that this is not for everyone. And you may be a very good student athlete, but if you're going to have a difficult time letting go of the prom, the dances, we hold the graduation ceremony, but if it's going to be difficult to not be able to go to those high school trips or all of the Friday night football games, then it's not for them. And typically that's when the parents would, the student athlete would look at the mother and father, and I could tell, and we let them know, like, if you have any doubts, it's not for you. Like, we don't want you to have buyer's remorse. We don't want you to, be with us in November, feel like you're missing out on so much. Our student athletes are, well, the one common trait that they have is that the social life, the social media, the social life comes, 3 or 4 down the row of their priorities. It's their academics, their athletic training, their family, and then fourth would be friends.
That's probably a good thing for your typical high level athlete to think about anyway, right? I mean, if you're going to succeed at that level, you're not going to have as much time for these traditional things, no matter where you are.
Yeah.
So
we just met with a father and a young man. He's multiple New Jersey state champion in youth wrestling. And I asked him that question: how are you going to handle not having friends to sit with, during the school day, walking around the hallways? And he goes, I'm looking forward to that. He goes, because none of the people I'm with in school are like me. They don't think like me. They don't have a schedule like me. He's like, I feel like I'm always saying no to do things because I have to train, or I have to, spend extra time at the gym. So that's the type of student athlete we're looking for, who knows walking into it what the sacrifices that are being made.
Okay. All right. Well, I think that's great. Thank you so much, Jamie. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks for this opportunity.
Absolutely.
Stay well.
You too.
Bye-bye. Take care.